Okay, is it working now? Okay, great. And you know that we are, some of us are joining here via Zoom, and the few lucky ones are in the conference room in the center of the Croatian part of the Biosphere Reserve in Đurđevac. And I would like to say good morning to all of you. Thank you for attending. Just a few announcements. Please turn your cameras on, because it's very difficult for the speakers to talk to empty screens, and have your microphones off unless you are speaking. After the presentations, you will have a chance to ask questions, and you can do so by going down in the bottom line of the Zoom, and there is a button called Reactions, and you can find a raise hand option there. And now a few welcoming words. I would like to kindly thank the organizers of this event, the Croatian Forest Research Institute, and present myself. My name is Marijana Vestergren. I'm from the Slovenian Forestry Institute, and I not only have the pleasure to moderate the conference today and tomorrow, but I also have the privilege to be the coordinator of the Refocus project. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the whole team, each and every member of the project for their dedication, patience, hard work, and positive attitude. So thank you. And actually the team of the Refocus project comes from all 5 countries of the Biosphere Reserve, from the Austrian Research Center for Forests, from the University of Sopron Forest Research Institute in Hungary, from the Croatian Forest Research Institute, who is the host today, from the Institute of Lowland Forestry and Natural Environment from Serbia, and of course from the Slovenian Forestry Institute. And some of you that are joining us here today, you already know the team because you have been following us through all the workshops. You have shared your ideas and you have shared your knowledge with us. And also without you, we would not be able to carry out this project. So the thank goes also to you, everybody who is joining us here today. But I don't want to talk too much about the project because we have an excellent film by the Croatian team that will tell you more about the project that I can, and it will also show you the forests of the Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve. So please, can we go to the film?
Međunarodni projekt Otporne poplavne šume kao ekološki koridori rezervata biosfere Mura-Drava-Dunav sastavljen je od projektnog konzorcija iz partnera iz Slovenije, Hrvatske, Srbije, Mađarske i Austrije. Voditelj projekta je Gozdarski institut iz Ljubljane u Sloveniji. Kao što možemo vidjeti po projektnom konzorciju, sve zemlje partneri pokrile su cjelokupno područje rezervata biosfere Mura-Drava-Dunav, te ovim projektom pokušavamo ustanoviti stanje poplavnih šuma uz rijeke Muru, Dravu i Dunav u svim projektnim zemljama. Sam projekt usmjeren je na poplavne šume u području biosfere Mura-Drava-Dunav zbog nepogoda koje pogađaju same poplavne šume, kao što su klimatske promjene, nepristupačni tereni, izostanak ljudskog utjecaja na same te poplavne šume, izostanak gospodarenja poplavnim šumama u području rijeka Mure, Drave i Dunava. Cilj Refocus projekta je potaknuti obnovu i gospodarenje poplavnim šumama u području biosfere. Očekivani rezultati Refocus projekta su preporuke o upotrebi i promociji drvenastih vrsta, prostorna analiza poplavnog koridora, priručnik o gospodarenju poplavnim šumama, informacijski sustav i identifikacijski alat za bolesti i štetnike poplavnih šuma, transnacionalne sjemenske zone za prijenos sjemena za 7 poplavnih vrsta drveća, baza šumskog reprodukcijskog materijala vezana za transnacionalna područja za prijenos sjemena, zajednička regionalna procedura prijenosa šumskog reprodukcijskog materijala, priručnik za upotrebu i konzervaciju šumskog reprodukcijskog materijala, regionalna banka gena poplavnih vrsta drveća, holistička strategija za povećanje otpornosti poplavnih šuma te osnivanje demonstracijskih objekata za educiranje dionika.
Sjeme je neizostavan i značajan čimbenik u životnom ciklusu svakog šumskog ekosustava. Nositelj je genetskih osobina i pozitivnih i negativnih koji se iskazuju u budućim generacijama. U današnjim narušenim ekološkim uvjetima jedan od najaktualnijih problema predstavlja čest izostanak i nepravilnost uroda sjemena šumskih vrsta. U laboratoriju za ispitivanje kvalitete šumskog sjemena obavljene su analize ispitivanja kvalitete projektnih vrsta. Metode koje koristi laboratorij za ispitivanje kvalitete sjemena propisane su ista pravilima International Seed Testing Association. To su određivanje sadržaja vlage u sjemenu, određivanje mase 1000 sjemenaka, određivanje čistoće sjemena, ispitivanje kvalitete sjemena, ispitivanje vitaliteta sjemena i zdravstveno stanje sjemena. Ono što možemo reći da je sjeme vrlo dobre kvalitete i pohranjeno je u hladnjačama u Hrvatskom šumarskom institutu.
U sklopu Interreg Dunav Refocus projekta u Hrvatskom šumarskom institutu nalazi se sjemenska štedionica u kojem je pohranjeno sjeme iz svih zemalja učesnica ovog projekta. Vrste drveća čije sjeme čuvamo u sklopu ovog projekta su hrast lužnjak, u Hrvatskoj najvrijednija šumska vrsta, listopadna, zatim brijest, jasen i joha.
Okay, thank you. So this was better, but we will share the link to the film in the chat, so you will be able to enjoy the film on the full screen with a nice sound later when you are alone. But you can also find it on the Refocus webpage. With that, I would like to invite the organizers of the conference to welcome us here. First, Dr. Sanja Perić, the director of the Croatian Forest Research Institute. Please, Sanja.
Thank you very much, Mariana. Dear colleagues,
we don't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
I
hear
can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Dear colleagues, dear project partners and stakeholders, dear friends. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of Croatian Forest Research Institute as a host of this final Stakeholders Interreg Refocus Project Conference. This unusual and I can say terrible health situation in the whole world as well as in our countries had an impact of the holding of this conference. As you can see, some participants are here, mostly from Croatia and only 2 from Serbia. I am glad that all of you are here, but from the other side, I am so sad that colleagues from other project partners institutions and also other countries and more participants can't be here with us. We are lucky that today's technologies allow us to organize a hybrid conference with small group here and much more online participants. But on the beginning, we have some small technical problems, but we solved it. I hope this conference will aim this goal, no matter this new normal situation. These Interreg Refocus projects give to all of us great pleasure and possibility to take a deeper look into riparian forests in all 5 project partners countries. I am so glad that the Croatian Forest Research Institute participates in this big and important project that connects researchers across these 5 European countries. Partnerships and networking of this importance give us the huge dimension of the importance of lowland forest ecosystem in relation to climate changing. Collecting data during these projects will be the great base for future projects in the field of forestry. On the other side, researchers and stakeholders will get useful information and best practices which can be used for improving their business but also research. Some of these results you will see on the next presentation in the next minute. And at the end of my speech, wherever you are, I wish you a successful meeting and also fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to welcome Dr. Mladen Ivankovic, the organizer of this conference, to give us a few words. Please, Mladen.
Hello, everyone. Just a few seconds, half a minute for me, because it's very hard to say anything better than my director tell us before. So from the bottom of my heart, I wish all of us successful next 2 days, today and tomorrow, and I hope that with less and less technician problems, we will have a successful final conference. So, from me, that's all. I will have a presentation in the next 2 hours. See you.
Okay, this is getting funny, but I hope you can all bear with us, because hybrid conferences are always difficult. I'm sorry for this. But let's go now to the state of the forests in the Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve, to the first results of the Refocus project. So I will share my screen and Marcus will, please stop sharing the film. Okay, I will invite Marcus Salmanshofer, who led the fieldwork observations across all the 5 countries, who was fighting together with the different countries' teams with the mosquitoes and high plants, to present us the initial part of the fieldwork. Please, Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, I feel honored to give you a small insight in our work on assessing the status of the forests in the Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve. The conditions of riparian forests under climate change and other environmental changes are strongly discussed. So we invested a lot of energy and we've been working more than 2 years on the task. So this presentation can only give you a small idea of what has happened in the field. And yeah, very generally, we applied 3 different approaches for getting data, and many of you have been involved and supported these approaches. We hosted stakeholder workshops, circulated a stakeholder questionnaire with more than 400 responses, and we carried out these field observations that we will now focus on. And for these field observations, we randomly located 50 transects across the Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve, orthogonal to the rivers, and we had different amounts per country corresponding to the area per country. Next slide, please. And these transects represent lines straight away from the rivers, and they cover only forested areas, and along these lines we located in 75-meter distances sampling plots where we assessed the forest conditions. And yeah, here you can see such a line with the distances, and the maximum length of the total transect was 600 meters. But before talking about the results, we would like to show you a video, and in the video you will see a part. No, stop one slide back, please. You will see what modules we assessed in the field, and we had very generally the site conditions, but we also assessed the major tree species, the growing stock, the stand structure and the management system, and the sampling plots, how much deadwood we could assess there, the regeneration, and this is what the results will focus on, and also the influence by game on the regeneration. Then we had the forest age and the tree growth and quality of the different tree species. Then we assessed habitat structures there, and we had very big assessments for forest protection issues. And last but not least, a big issue in the riparian forests, we also tried to assess the invasion by alien plants. And yeah, now to better let you feel what we did there, we compiled a short video. It's kind of a diary or a mixture between a documentation and a diary, and of course not as professional as the other one, but I hope you will feel the forest with this video.
Thank you, Marcos. Please show the film.
For Silio.
Silio.
It's really raining. Silio.
Marcus, bye. Bye. Next time. It tastes awful. It tastes awful.
Thank you, Marcus, for making this great film. I think it really puts you into the mood of the biosphere reserve and shows everyone how lovely and how difficult to work in the riparian forests are. So thank you, and thank everybody who was doing the field work. And you have gathered a wealth of information for the first time systematically across the whole Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve. And this information is still being analyzed. But as Marcus said before, I will continue a little bit with the presentation and present you some of the results that are connected to the regeneration of the forests. But before going to that, I would like to just tell you that using the Sentinel-2 spatial imagery within the project, we quantify the extent of forests in the Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve, and actually 27% of the Biosphere Reserve is covered by forests, the share of which increases in the core zone of the Biosphere Reserve to 61%. You can see the extent of forest on the picture on the bottom left. And you can see the distribution of the zones, the core, the buffer, and the transition area on the map, lower map on the right. What you can also see is the biodiversity distribution in the Biosphere Reserve, and it's actually the biodiversity refer here only to the project 3 species belonging to the genera Alnus, Populus, Quercus, Fraxinus, and Ulmus. So the red colors are forests where we have none of these species, and the green colors on the map are the areas where we have 6 or 7 of these named species or species from this genera present. So this was done, the information came from the National Forest Inventories. But going back to the forest observations led by Marcus, there was a lot of sampling plots like you have seen, and 48% of those were located in softwood forests. These are the forests that are closest to the watercourse, and 29% of the plots were in hardwood forests. 7% of them were in transition areas and 16% in other areas. And the forest management system on those plots was mostly even-aged forest. In half of the plots, the management system was even-aged, while we had uneven-aged continuous cover forestry in 70% of the plots, and nature-like forests in another 17% of the plots. Then we had coppices or plantations in 15%. But what is very important and very worrying for the riparian forests is the fact that it doesn't look well with regeneration. If you look at this graph, we can see that in the softwood forest, the forests with poplars and willows, the regeneration was either lacking, so in 40% of the cases, or it was present, but either in poor condition or not appropriate for the site. The situation was a little bit better in the hardwood forests in transition areas, but still far away from satisfying. You can see here the species that were found in the regeneration. Actually, 44 tree and shrubby species were found in the regeneration. Now, you can see here in red tones, these are species, 3 species that are non-native. And you can see that they are extremely common in the softwood forests, especially Acer negundo, and then a lot of Fraxinus pennsylvanica as well. Then we have species that are shrubby species or species not very important for commercial forestry. The share of those was also quite high. And the rest are species that are more adapted to or more nature-like to be in this kind of riparian forest, except that in other areas we also have a high share of, for example, here of Norway spruce. There was also a little bit of Pinus sylvestris, beech, but we also have a high share of oaks, for example, ashes, and maples and carpinus. These are the three species that are common in this forest, as well as poplars and a little bit of willows. And another problem with regeneration is the high pressure of game and their browsing. If we look at these numbers, we can see that the regeneration is highly browsed. Not the small seedlings, but as the taller the seedlings become, the more they are browsed. And the red tones on these graphs present seedlings that had either side and terminal shoots browsed or only terminal shoots browsed. And there is a high probability that this will not survive or that they will remain in kind of bushy form from the browsing onwards. And on the top graph, you can see that there is a decrease in the number of seedlings with height, but this is also a normal process from natural selection, that some seedlings do not survive, while here affected also by the browsing and other human influences. And another thing that you can see is that the deer really likes the seedlings exactly in the height of their mouth. So the seedlings that are most affected are the ones between, let's say, 50 and 150 centimeters. And what are the three species that the deer likes the best? Well, the deer doesn't like, for example, Picea abies or Pinus sylvestris. It also doesn't like the walnuts, neither the native Juglans regia nor the non-native Juglans nigra one. It also doesn't like the tree of heaven, Alianthus altissima, another non-native tree species. But in general, on average, there is not a high difference. There is not a difference between the browsing of native or non-native tree species. And of course, as Marcus said, we also had an extensive survey going on, distributed among foresters, conservationists, hunters, and other interested groups. And one of the questions that we asked them was whether they intend to adapt forest management to the changes that are expected or seen. And of course, a large share, 90% of them said, yes, we do intend to adapt forest management and conservation management to the changes that we have been observing. And I hope that the products that will be, or the outcomes of the project that will be presented later on will help them with this. And with that, I would like to thank you for listening to this presentation and ask for Silvio to present us the guidelines on riparian forest management and conservation. Now, we are quite short on time, so I will ask you to write down your questions and leave them for later on when we have a little bit more time for discussions. Please, Silvio.
Yeah, thank you, Mariana. I will share my screen.
Please.
We already heard a little bit in the introduction that one of the outcomes of this project would be guidelines on riparian forest management and conservation. What do we mean with that? As you have seen and already heard from the introduction on the project, Refocus covers a broad range of forest topics, from genes, forest pests, ecosystems, biodiversity, and all different aspects of riparian forests. Also, our topics address forest conservation questions as well as forest management. And those we decided within our project to develop guidelines for the biosphere reserve that need to include both conservation and management aspects. How do we came to these guidelines? Actually, when we planned this project, we already thought that if we develop such guidelines, we would need to have a broad, let's say, they should be based on the information that we receive in the biosphere reserve, as well as on the stakeholder opinions and thoughts, and on the problems that the stakeholders, the forest managers, the hunters, and so on, on the problems that they see within their forest. And due to this, we developed a process that we said, okay, on the one side, we need to look for the state of the riparian forest, and look what are the problems that we see in the field. On the other side, we also had different stakeholder workshops, and in the stakeholder workshops, we asked specifically for the main questions. We also had a survey questioning what stakeholders, what people of interest thought about the problems. And all these information together brought us to a first draft of the Riparian Forest Management Handbook. Finally, after we had a first draft with ideas what we would like to present within this handbook, we had another multinational, multi-stakeholder participation workshop in last autumn. Of course, the field excursion, which would be very helpful to discuss the problems in the field, needed to be skipped. But based on the stakeholder participation workshop, we even improved the draft of our Riparian Forest Management Handbook. And within the last months, we developed this handbook, which is now ready in English, and translations and developments are ongoing into all the languages of the Biosphere Reserve. So in German, Hungarian, Slovenian, Croatian, and Serbian language. And within the next month, we want to finish the preparation and the printing of all these handbooks within all the different languages. So now, I hope you're looking forward. What are the contents of this handbook? I just go quickly through the contents. Of course, we have an introduction. We a little bit explain what riparian forests are. But our main part are the so-called management guidelines, which deal with forest regeneration and genetics, which deal with forest and conservation management, and which deal with forest health aspects. And in addition, which also in the appendix provide tree species descriptions, map for the tree species, maps of the seed delineations that we developed, and so on. A little bit more in the detail, I just want to highlight one or two things. So in the riparian forests, in the explanation of the riparian forests, we discuss what are the importance and the threats of the two riparian forests, how to manage them, what is the typical structure and ecology of a river and floodplain landscapes, which forest habitat types do we find, and so on. And if you look then into the management guidelines, we have this topic on forest regeneration and genetics, where we discuss how to choose or how to select natural or artificial regeneration, to support the adaptation of forests by selecting suitable forest reproductive material, by, for example, also natural and seeding regeneration of pedunculate oak stands, and so on. And as you see in the forest and conservation management part, we discuss biodiversity and conservation management goals. We discuss challenges of climate change. We discuss the management of non-native plants, and so on. Some of these things you will hear in the next 2 hours. I just quickly will show examples for few cases. For example, there is one topic is on the genetic conservation for practitioners, because we don't want to, the aim of this handbook was to go to develop guidelines for practitioners, not only to show the theory, but what can really be done. So here we discuss a dynamic versus static gene conservation. You can learn here something about gene conservation stands and seed stands, and you can see very practical guidelines for implementation, how, for example, ex situ clone collections look like. Another example is and I'm sorry if I'm showing an example where I'm a little bit more familiar with. Another example is how we can enrich our natural regeneration with oak stands, or how we can do a restoration of oak stands via artificial regeneration. Oak is a very important native tree species, but has a lot of problems in natural regeneration and often requires artificial oak regeneration. So here we provide very practical examples how this could be done. We describe common ways of oak planting and discuss the pros and cons of the different planting designs. For example, here in the row planting, here the other option would be the group planting design, where you just plant them within groups in the distance of the typical future target trees, as you also can see here in this picture. A further example would be how also a different topic, as we find out, was that there are lots of poplar plantations within within the biosphere reserve and surrounding forests. And we also wanted to show an example how to integrate biodiversity enrichment in poplar forest management. We know these poplar plantations are highly productive and are an important woody resource, but on the other side, that biodiversity in large monocultural stands is low. So, for example, one option could be to decrease hybrid planting density to wide rows and add mixed species and natural regeneration to increase biodiversity on the one side, and at the same time to reduce management costs. And these were examples that have in one or other country already shown to be successful. So it was very important for us to share this experience with all the partners within the other countries. Also a very important topic is also and a very large part of the project of the handbook goes also into the pest management. Just one example I would like to show here is on what measures can be established to halt the spread of Phytophthora in the riparian forests. As many of you know, Phytophthora species are among the most dangerous forest pathogens and contribute to dieback in many riparian forests. And in this chapter, we discuss preventive versus curative strategies. We discuss how forest nurseries could adapt their management to enable a Phytophthora-free plant production with a proper seed management and a proper plant production. And we propose further strategies to prevent riparian forests from invasions by Phytophthora. Overall, we have a longer, some more chapters on forest pest management, which is, I think, which will be in the future very important in the management of riparian forests. Finally, a look to the appendix, which also did us a lot of work. Here you find the links, information to tree species occurrence and seed transfer. You find here the maps or links to the maps of species occurrence probabilities under climate change and seed transfer zones and their predicted spatial change over time. For example, for Alnus glutinosa is shown here, and you can find links then to the download to these high resolution maps within the management handbook. Moreover, you find for the 10 most important native and 3 non-native species, tree species portraits on their distribution, their habitat, their ecology, their forestry, climate change and a quick and short description about them in this style, which I think is very helpful, that if you're in the field, then you can quickly look for that and can see what are the specific characteristics of the respective species. Finally, I need to say a very, very strong thanks to the 35 authors who wrote this book, have contributed to that. It was a lot of work. It's not totally done yet. There's still the translation to be checked and finalized. It was a real great effort. So thanks to all of you who participated and contributed. A special thanks also to the stakeholders, foresters and conservation practitioners who provided us inputs and contributions to that, and their thoughts on and told us what they would need within such a handbooks. I hope we could fulfill their questions. Maybe not all of them, but we tried our best. And a special thank also to, of course, to our great coordinator Mariana, who strongly supported us with this handbook, to Marcus and Sylvia, and especially also to Peter, who did a very great job in editing this handbook together with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Silvio, for this great presentation. And it is a very rich book. And when you were registering for this conference, you also had the option to opt in for a book in a given language. And as soon as they are done, we will send them to you over snail mail, ordinary mail, but you will also receive links to the ebooks, because sometimes they are very nice if you are searching terms. I'm afraid that we are a little bit late, so questions to you, Silvio, also a little bit later when we have time. And I would like to ask now Katarina and Martin to tell us something about the invasive plants in the Mura-Drava Danube Biosphere Reserve.
Thank you, Mariana. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay. So I'm sharing our presentation, which you hopefully see, on how to deal with invasive alien species in the Biosphere Reserve. So Mariana already presented non-native species are a big topic also in the handbook. Several chapters and aspects are covering alien species because it's a very important topic when you talk about riparian forests. When we have a look to Europe's forest cover, which is, which is about, which is about 40% of the European land mass, you find riparian forests all over the continent, and all of it are including a lot of alien species, and some of them also invasive alien species. In general, invasive species are among the top four, the top four pressures for European forests. So, I'm sorry, I'm just getting, okay, and when we have a look on what invasive alien species are, you might find a lot of different definitions and terms used for those species. In general, we call alien species all living beings which were transported by humans for different purposes, intentionally and unintentionally, to a new area outside of their native range. Some of them then escape and establish and reproduce, as you can see here on this graph. And once they are successfully established, few of them manage to spread and reproduce even stronger, and even threaten biodiversity and ecosystems as we know it, as a negative impact. So the question for this presentation is how to deal with invasive alien species. And in the handbook also, we provided several steps also for this presentation, which might help you to find a way how to deal with this huge amount of different alien species in riparian areas. Like you can see here on those pictures, many alien species, and also especially the invasive alien species, have very different appearances. They look very different at the first sight. Also, their impacts are very different. They can have impact on the environment, on the plant growth, on the plant health, on the human health. So here you see, for example, the toxic reaction after you have touched, for example, the giant hawkweed. Then many insects have an impact of herbivory. And for the first step, it's important to identify the threat, the risk in the forest plot, in the forest, in the area. So whether it is the forest health or biodiversity, you identify the first step, the threat of the situation. The second would be to know your aliens, which means to really try to identify it. As you have seen already in the presentation of Marcus, there are several methods how you can identify species and alien species and invasive species in our case, along with transects. And there's a lot of tools helping you to identify the species and really to know the characteristics and also the dispersal of the invasive species in your area. What is also important to know the alien species outside of the area you focused on. And the third step, which we also did in this project, is to collect data in the area to really get an idea where the species are distributing and how are they influencing the biodiversity and the environment in the area. We have done this in the area of the biosphere reserve, and here you see just simply from one of our reports the list of alien species, of invasive alien species in the area, which you can see that 3 species are among the most observed occurring ones in the area, followed by quite famous ones like Solidago, Amorpha fructicosa, which is a shrub, and so on. The trick is really to look into the entire species set also, so you can identify those who have maybe not a great occurrence, but might have a quite high impact, which you might know from literature. But in the second half of the presentation, Martin will talk also more about this. So when you think about alien species or invasive species, an interesting aspect are also regulations. There's a lot of local, national, and regional legislations dealing with the management of invasive alien species. The famous one is the EU regulation on invasive alien species, which covers the prevention, the early detection, and the management of invasive species of the Union list, so predefined list of species. But you find many, many more restrictions or also management recommendations and obligations in many sectoral legislations like the Forestry Act or cross-sectoral legislations like a law on water management, for example. In all these very unexpected legislations, you find aspects of how to deal with invasive alien species in your area. And here I pass on to my dear colleague, Martin de Groot.
Thank you very much, Katerina. I will continue the story from here. So the step 4 is about identify pathways. In the forests in the riparian forests, there are many pathways for invasive alien species to get introduced there. There is, of course, natural dispersal, and this is happening often via forest roads, but also just by flying for insects or brought by wind for fungi. But there are also a lot of human activities where intentionally or unintentionally the species are brought into the forests. So they are planted in the forests, or they're brought, the seeds are brought with the, can you go back again, sorry, are brought when hiking or driving into the forest. So it's really, this is a part where we can focus on the prevention. So in general, we need to increase awareness of the pathways, how we bring these species into the forests. So next slide. This fifth part is about prioritizing the alien species. As all of us know, is that there's always a limit in finances. And this is also in the management of invasive alien species. Therefore, we need to find a way how to look at it. And for in the Refocus, we made an assessment or categorization of impact of alien species there. We, with the help of 21 local experts, we assessed in literature 207 alien taxa, so fungi, insects, and plants, and how were they affecting forests in riparian forests. So we used the method ICAT of the IUCN, and I will later on still present more results about it. But with this kind of categorization, we can facilitate the prioritization of management actions and predictions of potential future impacts of taxa. Next slide. So what we found for the biosphere reserve is that insects, on the graph you see that the insects have a relatively low impact. So most of them are minor concern or minor impact, then it's minimal impact, and the highest one is moderate impact, which is the orange one. Then if we go to plants, we see that actually they're more affecting the ecosystem, so in forests. So there were several species which are having major impacts on it, so which means that they are reducing reducing or have substantial effect on the ecosystem, different species. Well, let's say with moderate effect, you only affect a certain species and decrease in population, while in minor effect, you will only do some, have some problems, aesthetical problems. Fungi, as you can see, has no minimal concern. All fungi which we assessed had higher than minor impact. So, and even several species were having moderate to major impacts on plant species. Could you go on? So already mentioned a little bit before, I will show now the table for the ones which had a major impact on ecosystems. So fungi had mainly as an impact mechanism parasitism, so they are affecting the trees very much. Also some are, one was about competition, but plants were mainly problematic with competition. So they are affecting the species, other species which are on the forest floor, and therefore they cannot exist anymore. So when doing that, we have a result. We know how problematic this is but this is one step. This is now, and that's often where researchers actually get stuck. We have to talk, actually. We have to talk about our work. We have to talk about telling, awareness raising, that what we found about our results, that certain species are really problematic and that we should go on, that something has to be done. Like what we do now on our this stakeholder final conference. Next one. So, and of course, we can say, okay, everything is bad. We are not doing good, etc. But this is a very bad message. We also have to give everyone a good solution. What can we do towards invasive alien species? Because in the world, there's already too much of bad news going on. We need to have constructive solutions. So with the 7th step is the adaptation of adapt management actions. For removal of invasive alien species, we have several options. Mowing or hand pulling, manual removing, felling of trees, grazing, management, all these kind of things are possible. I would like to emphasize that biological control and chemical control are not recommended. Many times, you also, with chemical controls, you're also affecting other parts of the forest ecosystems, and ecosystem services, like natural enemies of certain species, which might be even more problematic and than what we actually try to achieve. Biological control. We see a story that people are trying to release biological control agents like wasps, and sometimes this has also some collateral damage, and this collateral damage by affecting other species is often much larger than what you actually want to achieve. If we're looking at silvicultural management adaptations, so what we can do is to promote shadier conditions, because many of the plant species are pioneers and want to have light conditions. Reduce the risk of management disturbances. If you have large areas, you have larger chance of large amount of invasive alien plant species, which is actually affecting the growth of the seedlings and saplings. And of course, also another one is like use of resistant clones or tree species. So, which is especially in the case of for invasive alien fungi and insects. So could you go next one? That was the one where we don't recommend the biological control agents. And then we have the 8th point is monitoring risk and success. So in the regard, if we find an animal in the or a plant in the biosphere reserve, then we have to, of course, act as soon as possible. So what we already saw in step 7. But afterwards, it's not done yet. You have to check every time if something comes back, because these species are known to be persistent and they will come back or are still in the seed bank or have roots there, so they will pop up again. Only, let's say, after several years of monitoring, after the last occurrence of this species, it is actually done and you can say, okay, it is a success. If you find it again, you start all over again with the rapid eradication. So can you go to the, so this was our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions to us, Katerina and me, I don't think we have time anymore, Mariana, then later.
Yes, well, I mean, we are late and we are supposed to be having a break now. I will let if anybody has an urgent question from all the three presentations or also from the fieldwork and the films, raise them now. Otherwise, we will take a break and be back in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, we had a little bit of a hiccups and that affects our agenda. So does anybody have an urgent question? If you do, please just raise your hand in the bottom of the Zoom under reactions, or raise your actual hand for the people sitting in the room. Okay, so no urgent questions. So let's take a break for 5 minutes. We are back at 10:17. That will put us almost back on time. And we will then have the breakout rooms where we will be able to discuss things in the second part of the session. Thank you all the speakers. It was great. And thank you everybody for your patience with the hiccups initially. I hope you enjoyed, nevertheless, the films and the presentations. Just switch off your cameras and be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. get your cups of coffee, open the windows, got some fresh air. I hope it's warm outside where you are and not raining like here. If you are back, please switch on your camera so I know we can continue. Okay, great. People are coming back, not everyone yet. In the room there, are you ready to continue?
Please, Vlada.
Okay. Hello, everyone, one more time today. I must say on the beginning that it's really very hard, or maybe it's better to say impossible to present everything what is important for gene conservation activities. And also it's not impossible to describe what is done during the last 3 years in Refocus Interreg Dunav project. But I will try to give you something in the next 10-15 minutes. My presentation is divided in three parts. In the first part, I will tell you why is so important gene conservation activities. Why is so important for forest. Then a few words about forest reproductive legislative in Croatia and what we have according to that forest reproductive material. And on the end, I will give you a few words about what we have in Jastrebarsko and what we done during last 3 years. So, according that, just for the beginning, I must say that it's really generally known that states of Western Balkan have a really unique biodiversity of forest resources in Europe. This wealth, with its national and international significance, really requires intensive care. Why? I will give you a few photos and you will see really why is that important. So, in the next few slides, I must say that this is not photos from North America or South America. This is photos few hundred kilometers from here, 100 kilometers from here. So those photos are really from Croatia, and it took a few years ago. This is slides from eastern Croatia, Slavonia, eastern Slavonia, very nearby border with Serbia. So in less than 30 minutes, much more than 100,000 cubic of woods was really damaged. The other example is on Adriatic coast. Island Brač. Other example is also in Croatia, in mountain area of Croatia, Gorski Kotar. So I think that you get the picture why what can happen to us, to all of us, in also Mura-Drava Dunav region also, but happily we do not have such a kind of situation. But if we want to have the same constitution of genes in future population, like in forest population before, we need to be prepared for that. So we need to have enough seeds for raising new, and I made here, new old forest. So in Croatian Forest Research Institute, we, during the last 10 years, we successfully established something. So Croatian Forest Research Institute, as official body, according legislative, forest reproduction material register, take care about forming and conservation of reserve seed material and seed bank. As I told you a few seconds ago, preparation for build starts in 10 years ago and successfully finished 2013. Few photos. What we have in that seed bank, not any kind of seed, but the best of the best quality of seeds. So we have there seeds from clonal seed orchard or seed stands of the best category in Croatia. What we have according Interreg Refocus project, unfortunately, not enough, and I must say now that I'm not satisfied with that, but maybe during the next half year, because project is prolonged for 6 months, we have there only seed of Fraxinus angustifolia and Alnus glutinosa. Alnus glutinosa from Croatia and from Slovenia, and Fraxinus from Austria and Serbia. Also, we have Quercus robur from Austria, Croatia, Slovenia, and Serbia. But I must say that it's known that Quercus robur is seed that we cannot storage it for a long period. So we established in a greenhouse with that acorn one provenance test. And in the future we will have, according that we will have a new knowledge of genetic diversity, and that is also good for us. And also for scientific purpose between all those people from those countries, Austria, Croatia, Slovenia, Serbia, and all the others which are interested in. So, few photos about seed that we have in Jastrebarsko, Alnus glutinosa, black elder from Slovenia and from Croatia. Fraxinus narrow leaf ash from Austria and Serbia. We have also, I must say, we also have from Croatia, but not from Mura-Drava-Dunav region, but from eastern Slavonia, because in last 3 years we didn't have a mass crop in that area with Fraxinus. And a few slides about provenance trial of pedunculate oak. We did it this spring. And few words for conclusions. In season with mass crop, not every year, but when we, during our observers, when we will saw that we have a mass crop of any kind of species, then we need to harvest that seed. We need to establish a regional seed bank that will be very, very good. With short-term storage, like I give example with pedunculate oak, that is impossible really, never in the world. There are no methods for storage seed like acorn for a longer period, but we could establish a new regional genetic test, provenance test. Then we will have on that way exit to conservation, and we will have a new knowledge of genetic diversity. For the end of this presentation, I will give a few words to Miran Lanšak to give us. He will give us all some information about selection of plus trees.
Hello, everybody. My name is Miran Lanščak. I come from Croatian Forest Research Institute, and in next 2 minutes I'll be short. I will tell you a few words about selection of plus trees, which we done within the Refocus project. For our luck, we have a great help from all project partners in all 5 countries where we selected plus trees, and everything of that of 5 key species in riparian forest. Everything of that will be shown in register of plus trees, where all the trees will be put on the map with all the measurements which we made on the plus trees. And also the criteria for selecting of plus trees will be shown in that register. So we measured DBH, height, health condition of the crown, and if it was possible, we measured the comparison trees. Just for the comparison, we used that for the Quercus robur, and it was hard to do with Populus nigra, for example, or Ulmus minor. So I will finish with these few words, and this is just the short description of the selection of plus trees, but everything will be shown in the register of plus trees, which we are preparing this week to publish it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mladen and
for a nice flowering of trees this year and a lot of seeds, so we can still collect them and put them in our gene bank and have a storage both of seed and seedlings for the future. So if something happens, we have a backup for our forests of the Mura-Drava-Danube Biosphere Reserve. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed for that. And more about the forest reproductive material and why it's so, and why there are not, or how important it is to have the seed years and actually collect the seed when we have the seed years. I think Laszlo will tell us a little bit more about that. Please, Laszlo.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
I regularly drop my connection.
Yeah, we can hear you now, but the screen is not shared. Okay, are you there, Laszlo? Hello, Laszlo. Okay, Laszlo seems to have problems with the connection. Are you there now, Laszlo? Can you hear us?
Yes, sorry about the breaks in the connection. I hope I will survive this presentation. I assume you gave already the floor to me.
We will be kind to you.
Okay,
can you share your screen? We cannot see the screen.
Yes. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Laszlo Nagy, and I'm working for the Forest Research Institute belonging to the University of Sopron, Hungary. I will give you a short overview of the forest reproductive material related activities and outputs of this project. But just to
Laszlo, we cannot hear you. No, still no. Back.
The selection and the utilization of the proper and appropriate genetic background is one of the key factors.
Okay. Can you hear Laszlo? Is it only me that has? No, you cannot hear him either. Laszlo, could you disconnect and connect again to the conference? And in the meanwhile, we have the other presentation. Laszlo? Laszlo, is it okay if you disconnect and connect again? And in the meanwhile, we have another presentation to try to solve this issue?
Yes, I would like to suggest that we should switch the presentations. Meanwhile, I will look for another computer. You will almost certainly not get a video feed of me, but I can share my screen.
Okay, great. Let's try it like that. So I hope everything works for you, Laszlo, and we see each other. You give the presentation a little bit later, but now I would like to ask then Michele Bozzano, the coordinator of the European Forest Genetic Resources Program, to put what we have done on a more local scale across the biosphere reserve, to put the riparian, what we did in riparian forests into a European perspective. So please, Michele, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mariana, and good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me being here online with you today and to try to contribute to this discussion by, like Mariana just introduced, just providing the bigger frame, the bigger perspective. What I will be doing today, I will give you a very short presentation where I can introduce what we are doing at European level in pan-European cooperation, mainly on the conservation of forest native diversity, but also the current effort in developing a strategy for European forest genetic resource that is more than just conservation. So I will just start sharing my screen now, and please, Mariana, can you see it properly?
Yes, I can see it properly, Michele.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So very briefly, the European Forest Genetic Resource Program in this moment has 24 countries that they are financially supporting the program, but this project was, was initiated starting from a Forest Europe resolution of 30 years ago. And it was one of the main cooperation program, one of the main implementation program of this process. With this process, the European country decided to cooperate for the protection of the genetic diversity of European forests. And through the years, we have evolved in a number of strategies, in a number of key commitments, but especially we have been extremely active in the science policy interface. Having all the European countries cooperating, we could identify the needs, we could identify the trends, and we can formulate those into practical and political changes that we advocate for. I know that we are very short in time, so very briefly I will show you 3 of the most recent outputs that were released last year. One of these 3, the one on genetic aspect linked to the production and the use of forest productive material, it is very much in line with what we have been doing within this project, and highlighting basically in this overview, in this review of scientific publication, scientific evidence, we introduce all the various elements in the production chain of forest productive material, basically from the decision to go for artificial or natural regeneration to the follow-up after planting. All the production chain, we make an analysis and we highlight what are the genetic implications, because there are many actors that are involved in this that very often, sometimes they're not even aware of or the impact on the genetic makeup or the final population on given activities. And this is what we, with our effort, what we bring. We increase the awareness of these implications, but we also provide a reference for nursery managers, forest managers, and policymakers to see what are the actions that need to be taken in order to ensure that this material is properly used and on one side and choose them as well. In order to provide you the bigger picture, I want to go back a little bit with a document, with a strategy that was developed nearly 7 years ago now, but it is an effort that started about 20 years ago. And all European countries have been really very active in developing this strategy. Well, this is a strategy for the genetic conservation of forest trees. I'll just give you a couple of slides to introduce the issue. So first of all, why we need a strategy. So you know that genetic diversity varies within species distribution range. And we also know that species don't reduce themselves to countries' borders. What you can see in the image on your right, it is the distribution range of 50 European forestry species overlapping. And well, borders of country have nothing to do with how the species well cover the European landscape. Genetic diversity of those species varies within the species distribution range, and in order to make sure that we conserve the adaptive potential, we conserve this genetic diversity, countries need to really collaborate. And all countries in a given species distribution range needs to be part of the same conservation effort. With this principle, we have been setting up the key concept of the current genetic resource conservation strategy. So first of all, it works in absolute genetic knowledge. So for any species, even if we know very little of the genetic diversity of the species, we have ways, we have means, and we have measures and priorities in order to make progress in the conservation of the given species. The strategy, as I was saying, defines the target level of genetic diversity we want to conserve, and identify and present the criteria for selecting what are the units. We call them dynamic genetic conservation unit to conserve the most valuable genetic diversity of forestry species, as well as identify gaps. So very briefly, I have just one slide about this, and this is Pinus sylvestris. And as you can see here, in different colors shaded is the Pinus sylvestris distribution range. And Pinus sylvestris has a very wide distribution across Europe. And it covers different ecosystems, different environmental zones. And the different colors that you see in this map are different environmental zones. And we assume that if the species is adapted to survive and to regenerate in these different environmental zones, has developed some adaptive capacity. And this is basically our core principle. So our ultimate goal is to conserve this adaptive capacity in a network of genetic conservation units. And what you can see here is this network genetic conservation unit. As you can see, there are countries that are still making progress in this regard, but there are also countries that have already quite a very consistent range of these genetic conservation units. What we do is, within this network, we identify the genetic conservation unit that they are the one that can better help for the long-term conservation. I have selected some species. So here we see Populus nigra, and you can see that even if it's a species that has been extremely widely used in Europe for plantation forestry and very much used in riparian ecosystems, well, actually there are not that many genetic conservation units like you could see in Pinus sylvestris in the previous slides. But still, what I think is important to see is that this genetic diversity is conserved throughout all, most of the European countries. Well, here we see Quercus robur, which is subject of more intense conservation. Well, I can also anticipate that Quercus robur, Pinus sylvestris, and three other species together account for half of the genetic conservation effort that we currently have in Europe. Those species are the ones that they are mostly interesting or relevant for economical purposes. But then there are really many other species, and many of these riparian tree species are really important for that are lacking behind in terms of being properly conserved. Here we see Fraxinus angustifolia, and then here Fraxinus excelsior. I think I still have also Alnus, and if I'm not mistaken, I also have the Ulmus. No, sorry. Then we only have Alnus. And Alnus, you can see, is really lagging behind in terms of the amount of genetic conservation units that have been established. It is important that we conserve all 3 species, and the 3 species that are relevant for the various ecosystems, because we don't know exactly what kind of future we will have in terms of a stable forest in our landscape and in 100 or 200 years ahead. So for this reason, it's really important that we strengthen our capacity in conserving this, this wide range of genetic diversity, and we strengthen also the international collaboration, because, well, in a moment then when climate is changing drastically as it's changing now, the diversity that we have in our own country may not be sufficient in the future. And this comes to the, well, the second part of my short presentation. As I was saying, this effort started in 2015. What we are doing now, we are working on a new European forest resource strategy, which is more comprehensive. In the current pan-European strategy, the one that was released in 2015, we were looking only at the conservation. In the new strategy, we have a more specific approach, a broader approach. So what we need is a more holistic approach that is not only what needs to be conserved, but also the way this is used, promoted, and how we place the various actors in the European landscape. In addition, as I was telling you before, the current strategy works in absolute genetic knowledge, but we are currently generating a lot of knowledge on the genetic diversity of species, and we want to have ways to make use of this genetic knowledge so that it can better guide the conservation activities that we have in Europe and the selection of the most valuable population. And we also need to set priorities. As I told you, 6 species alone account of half of the conservation network. It means that, well, at least 95 of the top 100 still are lagging behind. All need to be conserved, but we need to set priorities because resources are not unlimited, and we need to find where we can concentrate and how, well, what kind of measures and how to support countries, neighborhood countries especially, in making sure that they're conserving this diversity. And again, riparian ecosystem are a very good example on the need of this cross-border collaboration. There is a drafting team, and well, you will recognize several names of people that are contributing to this effort, and some established within the U4Gen network. Some come from existing networking project funded by the European Commission, and some other comes from past projects. Just very briefly, the main chapter, as I was telling you before, we have a chapter that deals with the conservation of stable use of genetic diversity, and chapter that explain what kind of change, what kind of transition we want to see. I will just very briefly introduce this chapter 2, the one that present conservation of sustainable use. So we have one part that's introduced the availability and access to the information, which is really important to know what we need to conserve, to characterize what is conserved, to set priorities, and also to support the one that I said at a second moment that we want to make use of this genetic diversity. And this is exactly why we need this more elaborated strategy. This is what I would like to close my presentation with, highlighting on the fact that we need to, we conserve the genetic diversity because we felt the responsibility for the forestry species, but we conserve forest genetic diversity because we want to make use of this diversity. We want to make use that this diversity is available for the long term, but we also want to make sure that this diversity can be used when we need to restore ecosystem. It needs to be used when we manage the ecosystems. And this is another important element, the management of the forest genetic resources, the management of the forest where these forest genetic resources are hosted, are located. Like Silvio was introducing before, and like Mariana also highlighted, this landscape, they really need to be managed. We have the responsibility of seeing when there is a trend, where is the change that is happening, to understand if it is changed because of invasive species need to be reverted, or simply because our tree species are not regenerating, or they don't have the appropriate seed source. And this is where we have the responsibility of supporting the forest managers in identifying the appropriate reproductive material and then making use of it. And with this, I conclude my presentation, and I hope we will have possibility for some exchange of view and well, and speak later on. Thank you very much, Mariana.
Thank you very much, Michaela. This was a great inclusion of our work into the wider European perspective, and the work the EuFroGen is doing is really important in terms of preserving the forest genetic resources. And it's also leading the global efforts. And now we go back to one of the key parts of conserving forest genetic resources and using them for regeneration of forests. So Laszlo, I hope you are back with us. Yes, you are here, please.
Yes, let's make another try. Let's see if my connection is improved. So I skip the introductory sentences, but I would like to stress the importance of the proper seed or planting material, because this is one of the key factors that we can influence during our activities in the forests. We can't really affect climate, we can't really affect soil. Unfortunately, we can't have the momentum to affect
Hi, Laszlo. I think we lost you again. Okay, I think Laszlo is gone again. Laszlo, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
It's quite unstable. Sometimes I can't decide. I can not identify if I am online or not, connected or not.
Okay, then just please go ahead. We can see your slides. Okay. Maybe if you stop on your screens, because we see like I think you're sharing from somebody else's screen. If whoever is sharing the screen can collapse the tile so we can see the full slides.
Well, I am sharing my screen.
You're sharing. Okay, we see a little bit of all the, well, your name, your slide, myself and Michaela, that's what I see at least. And it goes over the text. If you could collapse that, that would be great.
Okay.
Or move it to another screen if you have two screens.
No, I have a single screen, and this seems to be stuck here.
Okay, great. It looks great
better
now. And then you just go ahead and you have the slides, and in case if the connection goes out, we all read the slides, and then when you come back, you come back.
Okay, then it would be a quite fast lecture because I didn't put too much on the slides. So the proper reproductive material is quite important, because this is one of the key factors that we can influence by choosing the proper material. In this presentation, I just give a short summary on the FRM-related activities and outputs of the projects, including the delineation of translational seed transfer zones, develop guidelines on FRM production, selection of local plus trees to be used as new seed sources. Fortunately, Mirana has already mentioned this topic, so I can skip it. And the two remaining topics are the common seed source database and the policy package related to FRM topics. So for the transnational seed zones, this activity was aimed at defining the transnational delineation for optimal seed and plant transfer in riparian forests across the project area based on nationally available knowledge of local adaptation of forest species, the climate, soil, and water availability. What are these zones and what are they good for? The transnational distribution modeling and seed zone delineation is supporting forest and conservation managers in selecting the most appropriate plant material for reforestation. When we are looking for adapted plant material in changing climate, you know, it's like shooting at a moving target. So we have to aim in front of it. Such a tool will allow the managers to select, to identify the reproductive material that is most suitable for their future climate conditions. Refocus adopted the approach of a recently finished Interreg Central Europe project called SASTRI for this activity. And the activity was coordinated and the modeling was carried out by our Austrian colleagues, namely Dev Chakraborty, Marcus, and Silvio. So first, they created species distribution models for our keystone riparian species. What are the, what shows such kind of species distribution model? It shows the projected probability of occurrence of a species in the present and in two future periods for 2041 and 2060 and 2081 to 2100 for two climatic scenarios, one moderate and one pessimistic scenario. For this modeling, the species occurrence data have been compiled from existing publications, the Maori dataset, and besides this, over 250,000 occurrence data were collected by project partners. The environment dataset included climatic data extracted from the downscale Eurocordex database that has developed in the framework of SASTRI, so characteristic and water availability data. These SDMs have been developed for the project's target species, the 7 target species, and 3 additional species that might have some room in riparian environment. This is how a species distribution model looks like. It's of the black alder. On the left, you see the whole program area. On the right is the project area, the biosphere reserve. From the top to the bottom is the present situation. The next two is the moderate climatic scenario for the 2 time periods, and the last 2 is the projection of projection based on the pessimistic climatic scenario. I show you two other SDMs just to show a less pessimistic picture and to look on some differences between the projected future of the ash species. On the left is narrow-leaved ash, and the right is the common ash. So after that, special clustering of climatically similar data was carried out, and this resulted in the delineation of what we call seed transfer zones in the project partner countries. Of course, these areas will dynamically shift in a changing climate, will move around and change their extent, contracting and expanding. That's why future maps have also been developed for the two scenarios and two periods mentioned earlier. So this is a kind of clustering map for the narrow leaf dash. And okay, these are existing, but how to use these maps? First, you have to check if the desired or the selected species has some future in your locality. This could be made on the species distribution models for future periods based on your preferences or choices on climatic scenario and the time frame. You can check the future probability of occurrence of a given species. If it's good enough for you, let's say it's over 80 or 60%, then you can find out which future seed transfer zone will cover your location. And this is made by the seed zone map on the future period. And if it's identified, in this case is the cluster 4, you can go and see the clustering map for the current climate. Where are those regions are located, where the present climatic situations are matching your future climatic environment. And there is it, you have just found the area. In these areas, we can assume that the reproductive material collected there is pre-adapted to your future climate. So the second important output was the planting material use and conservation guidelines. These guidelines aim to provide guidance on seed source selection, seed collection and processing, nursery technology for production of planting material of riparian species to ensure the sustainable genetically sound artificial regeneration. So we are not talking about natural regeneration, we are talking about situations where artificial regeneration is needed, being it because of species substitution or habitat reconstruction or any case you can imagine. These conservation guidelines are formed following the approach when we try to combine scientific knowledge and long-term practice-based experience by nursery managers. First, in the framework in this activity, a catalogue of good practices has been compiled based on the results of a stakeholder workshop held in Austria. A questionnaire has been developed for collecting specific knowledge from nurseries producing planting material, and targeted interviews have been carried out with these nursery managements. The results are to be published in the guidelines. Well, during the registration, you will have been asked in the registration form if you wish to receive a copy of some handbooks of the projects. Well, one of them is this publication. So if you check, then you will receive this publication. The guidelines covers general topics from basic material selections and seed collection, handling and storage to the planting of the seedlings. And because we are concentrating on riparian species, species specific protocols for keystone riparian trees are also included. This activity was coordinated and led by our Slovenian colleagues, especially Gregor and Mariana put a huge amount of work here. So the third topic was already mentioned by Miran. Thank you for that. I will not repeat in detail and skip to the common seed source database for riparian forests. In order to help the identification and access of forest reproductive material sources in the region, we decided to establish a common database that is based on the national registers, contains information derived from the national registers, but also includes environmental information and hopefully information on available seed or planting material stocks. Besides that, we aim to help lifting the language barrier via a multi-language user interface. The basic structure of the structure of the basic data is quite similar to the national registers and to the common European register, the Forematis, regarding the basic information and the seed type or seed source information, but are supplemented by environmental information, including the basic climatic parameters and water availability related information, as well as provenance information, including the actual region of provenance based on the national provenance region delineation, and information on the seed transfer zones developed and recommended by the Refocus. This database is under construction, and according to our best hopes, will also include some harvest information and stock availability information if the confidentiality and the GDPR problems are solved. Last but not least, I mentioned that we have some policy related or policy level documents that could guide the actors interested in forest reproductive material production, transfer and trade and deployment in the project partner countries. During this work package, 11 national legislation, administrative procedures, authority practice have been reviewed in quite good detail in the partner countries, and 2 documents have been compiled on the results. One of them gives recommendations for non-EU countries on how to harmonize FRM transfer procedures with EU member countries in order to help them find their way easier to the EU markets. And the second one is the common regional FRM transfer procedure that is focused on the FRM related legislation of the project partner countries. This activity was also coordinated by the Slovenian colleagues, namely Hojka and Mariana coordinated the work. So that's for all. thank you for your attention, and I would like to thank again for all the colleagues are working on these activities. I would like to repeat that that was a real large-scale collective efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Laszlo. Can you please stop sharing the screen?
Yes, I am on it.
Yes, you are doing that. Great. It was great to hear about the forest reproductive material. That is one of the key things in the regeneration of riparian forests. And some of the things that Laszlo was mentioning, of course, you will see in both of the Refocus books. And the other things you will be able to see in the Refocus webpage. All the reports will be available there for you freely to download and use. But now I have a question. We are supposed to finish in 5 minutes. We can either do this in a way that we go into breakout groups, and in a groups of like 7 people, around 7 people, you discuss what you heard and ask questions. There will for sure, we are many from the project, there will for sure be somebody from the project that you will be able to discuss with them. Or the other way is, because we are short on time, is that you, if you have any questions, you raise them here and we try to answer them. I hope you do have some questions. Otherwise, it means that we were very clear. You understand everything that we have done. So what would be, maybe just raise your hands like that if you are for the breakout room option. Okay, that's a clear no for the breakout rooms. So now I expect a few questions. Okay, please you can raise your hand by using the reactions button in the bottom of your Zoom screen. And you have there something that is called raise hand. So if anybody has a question for any of the speakers. Okay, everything was clear. Can I see the picture of the Ormladen? Can you look around the room if anybody has a hand up there?
There's no question in this room, and I think, and I agree with you that everything was very clear during every presentation today. So no question from this room. No.
Okay, no, but then it really seems everything is clear. Does anybody want to say something more from the presenters? Your impressions?
Well, Mariana, since you're giving this possibility, I think I will not miss it, because I would like to congratulate with you and with all colleagues for all what you have presented, because it's really impressive in the way you managed to have this collaboration and through, I mean, within different countries, but also to arrive to develop a specific suggestion, specific criteria. You were asking for also for some general consideration. One of the big problems that I see that we are facing more and more frequently is this dualism between conserving and not, I mean, with the, to some community, conserving is really taking action in the landscape, but for some other community, conserving is just doing nothing and just going away and kicking out the humans out of the landscape. Riparian ecosystems are very often very, very close to humans. And I've seen it in many cases, really, this riparian ecosystem then will not be touched at all. So I was wondering if, in general, if in different countries you have observed the same trend, that you have some community responsible for these protected areas, and this happens very often with Natura sites, then they cannot be managed. And then if this is generating conflict with other communities, and in the specific community like ours, that is responsible for conserving the genetic diversity, which on the opposite very often requires active management.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela. That's a very tough question. We did have discussions on our workshops. I mean, we were really lucky to have both foresters and conservation experts in our discussions, and both contributed also to preparation of our books. And in general, what I would say, but I will ask anybody from the room to add information to that, but I would say that our goals deep down were always the same. We always wanted the forests to be good, to provide the services that they provide. And management was not having management was not really an issue. And we have a special deliverable or a presentation also that sums up the stakeholder views and also the conflicting interests between the conservation and the forest management. And if you look at the mail, there are links on the bottom for other technical presentations that we did, because in 2 hours there was not possibility to present everything that we did in this project, and we did really, really a lot. You will find there a presentation about the stakeholder views, and hopefully that might clear a little bit. But yes, I agree, management, I mean, for me, I'm a forester, I'm also a researcher, and I work with genetic resources. Management is absolutely crucial for managing and for conserving genetic resources, because we, without doing so, we might end up in losing them. I mean, there are multiple dangers, there are diseases, there are invasive species, there is climate change, there is so many threats to the genetic resources, and we need to put our active management inside the forest to actually preserve them for the future. Maybe we will replant them to some other places, but if you want to keep them, we need to manage them. That is my view, but I would like, if anybody in the room has something to add, please. Just open your mic, please, Silvio.
Yeah, maybe just one thought. Maybe the problem with these riparian forests, where our main focus is, that actually the threats within these forests are not directly, they are not coming from the management. They're coming from the river regulations, they come from climate change and all the other things. So both conservation in groups as well as forest groups, they, let's say, they fear the same threats within these. And we all know if river regulation comes, then we have problems in the managed oak forest as well in the let's say in the conservation area with oaks. So that's why the conflicts have not that strong. Also, I think the concept of these biosphere reserves is also that you have some, let's say, some core areas without any management, and you have other areas where management is allowed. And I think the broad concept of these biosphere reserves, that also allows these management, it actually requires it, because you need to get the local people, the local stakeholders, the local forest owners involved, and this requires also to consider their management interests.
Okay, thank you, Silvio.
Thank you, Silvio. Thank you, Mariana.
Michele, you have the mic off. You want to say something more?
I just wanted to thank you, both of you.
Okay, great. Does anybody else in the room wants to share some thoughts with us? Come on, from the conservation side. You are very shy. Okay. Okay, but then with that, I think maybe it's time for me to wrap up. We have used our time for this conference. We will be here again tomorrow. And tomorrow we will present, or we will do a training in another of the major accomplishments of the Refocus project. That is the Danube Forest Health Information System, where we have developed an application and a web database that can help you identify pests and diseases and monitor them where they are spread in the forest. And tomorrow Nikki will be doing the presentations. And as well as Simon Zidar. Unfortunately, Martin will not be able to join us, but you are warmly welcome to attend tomorrow also at 10 o'clock. If you are interested in the health of the riparian forests, in whatever way. And with this, I would also like to thank you for being here today, for contributing, for the speakers for contributing, for everybody who was listening for listening. I hope you got a better view of the Biosphere Reserve. I hope you have a better view of the riparian forests now. I encourage you to look more to the webpage. In the library section, you will find, for example, the shapefiles of the Mura-Drava-Danube Biosphere Reserve, the distribution of forests. Also, something that we did not mention is the corridor functioning of the forests in the Biosphere Reserve. So all that is available on the webpage, as well as a lot of reports and these presentations that we have prepared especially for you, because we knew that we will not be able to present you all the topics. With that, I would like to thank you. I would like to thank the organizers, and have a great day.